The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Book 1. The Book of Three. Chapter 7. The Trap. From the corridor, a faint sound grew louder. Taran hastened to press his ear against the slot in the portal. He heard the heavy tread of marching feet, the rattle of weapons. He straightened and stood with his back to the wall. The girl had betrayed him. He cast about for some means to defend himself, for he had determined they would not take him easily. For the sake of having something in his hands, Taran picked up the dirty straw and held it ready to fling. It was a pitiable defense, and he wished desperately for Gwydion's power to set it ablaze. The footsteps continued. He feared then they would enter the other cell. He breathed a sigh of relief when they did not stop, but faded away toward what he imagined to be the far end of the corridor. Perhaps the guard was being changed. He turned away, certain Ilonway would not be back, and furious with her and her false promises. She was a rattle-brained fool who would undoubtedly giggle and take it as a great joke when the Cauldron-born came for him. He buried his face in his hands. He could hear her chatter even now. Taran started up again. The voice he heard was real.
"Must you always sit on the wrong stone?" it said. "You're too heavy to lift."
Taran jumped up and hurriedly cleared the straw away. The flagstone was raised. The light from the golden ball was dim now, but enough for him to see that Ilonway looked pleased with herself.
"Your companion is free," she whispered, "and I took Malingar from the stable. They're hidden in the woods outside the castle. It's all done now," Ilonway said gleefully. "They're waiting for you, so if you get a move on and stop looking as if you'd forgotten your own name, we can go and meet them."
"Did you find weapons?" Taran asked.
"Well, no, I didn't have a chance to look," Ilonway said. "Really," she added, "you can't expect me to do everything, can you?"
Ilonway held the glowing sphere close to the stone floor.
"Go first," she said. "Then I'll come down after so I can put the stone back in place. Then when Arkan sends to have you killed, there won't be any trace at all. She'll think you disappeared into thin air, and that will make it all the more vexing. I know it isn't nice to vex people on purpose. It's like handing them a toad. But this is much too good to miss, and I may never get another chance at it."
"Arkan will know you let us escape," Taran said.
"No, she won't," said Ilonway, "because she'll think I'm still locked up. And if she doesn't know I can get out, she can't know I was here. But it's very thoughtful of you to say that. It shows a kind heart, and I think that's so much more important than being clever."
While Ilonway continued to chatter away, Taran lowered himself into the narrow opening. The passage was low, he discovered, and he was obliged to crouch almost on hands and knees. Ilonway moved the stone into place and then began to lead the way. The glow from the sphere showed walls of hard-packed earth. As Taran hunched along, other galleries opened up on either side.
"Be sure you follow me," Ilonway called. "Don't go into any of those. Some of them branch off and some of them don't go anywhere at all. You'd get lost, and that would be a useless thing to do if you're trying to escape."
The girl moved so quickly, Taran had difficulty keeping up with her. Twice he stumbled over loose stones in the passage, clutched at the ground, and pitched forward. The little light bobbed ahead, while behind him long fingers of darkness grasped his heels. He could understand why Arkan's fortress was called Spiral Castle. The narrow, stifling galleries turned endlessly. He could not be sure whether they were making real progress or whether the tunnel was merely doubling back on itself. The earth and ceiling trembled with racing footsteps.
"We're just below the guard room," Ilonway whispered. "Something's happening up there. Arkan doesn't usually turn out the guard in the middle of the night."
"They must have gone to the cells," Taran said. "There was a lot of commotion just before you came. They surely know we've gone."
"You must be a very important assistant pigkeeper," said Ilonway with a small laugh. "Arkan wouldn't go to all that trouble unless—"
"Hurry," Taran urged. "If she puts a guard around the castle, we'll never get out."
"I wish you'd stop worrying," Ilonway said. "You sound as if you were having your toes twisted. Arkan can set out all the guards she wants. She doesn't know where the mouth of the tunnel is, and it's hidden so well an owl couldn't see it. After all, you don't think I'd march you out the front gate, do you?"
Despite her chattering, Ilonway kept a rapid pace. Taran bent close to the ground, moving half by touch, keeping his eyes on the faint glow. He skidded past sharp turns, fetched up against rough walls, skinned his knees, then had to move twice as fast to regain the ground he had lost. At another bend in the passageway, Ilonway's light wavered and dropped out of sight. In a moment of darkness, Taran lost his footing as the ground rose steeply on one side. He fell and rolled. Before he could recover his balance, he was sliding rapidly downward in a shower of loose stones and earth. He collided with an outcropping of rock, rolled again, and dropped suddenly into the darkness. He landed heavily on flat stones, legs twisted under him. Taran climbed painfully to his feet and shook his head to clear it. Suddenly, he realized he was standing upright. Ilonway and her light could not be seen. He called as loudly as he dared. After a few moments, he heard a scraping above him and saw the faint reflection of the golden ball.
"Where are you?"
called the girl. Her voice seemed quite distant.
"Oh, I see. Part of the tunnel's given way. You must have slipped into a crevice."
"It's not a crevice," Taran called. "I've fallen all the way down into something, and it's deep. Can't you put the light into it? I've got to get up again." There were more scraping noises.
"Yes," Ilonway said. "You have got yourself into a mess. The ground's all broken through here, and below there's a big stone like a shelf over your head. How did you ever manage to do that?"
"I don't know how," replied Taran, "but I certainly didn't do it on purpose."
"It's strange," Ilonway said. "This wasn't here when I came through the first time. All that tramping must have jarred something loose. It's hard to say. I don't think these tunnels are half as solid as they look, and neither is the castle, for the matter of that. Arkin's always complaining about things leaking and doors not closing right."
"Do stop that prattling," cried Taran, clasping his head. "I don't want to hear about leaks and doors. Show a light so I can climb out of here."
"That's the trouble," said the girl. "I'm not quite sure you can. You see, that shelf of stone juts out so far and goes down so steeply. Can you manage to reach it?"
Taran raised his arms and jumped as high as he could. He could find no handhold. From Ilonway's description and from the massive shadow above, he feared the girl was right. He could not reach the stone, and even if he could have, its sharp downward pitch would have made it impossible to climb. Taran groaned with despair. "Go on without me," he said. "Warn my companion. The castle is alerted."
"And what do you intend doing? You can't just sit there like a fly in a jug. That isn't going to help matters at all."
"It doesn't make any difference about me," Taran said. "You can find a rope and come back when things are safe."
"Who knows when that will be? If Arkin sees me, there's no telling what might happen. And suppose I couldn't get back? You'd turn into a skeleton while you're waiting. I don't know how long it takes for people to turn into skeletons, though I imagine it would take some time. And you'd be worse off than before."
"What else am I to do?" cried Taran. Ilonway's talk of skeletons made his blood run cold. He recalled, then, the sound of Gwyn, the hunter's horn, and the memory of it filled him with grief and fear. He bowed his head and turned his face to the rough wall.
"That's very noble of you," said Ilonway, "but I don't think it's really necessary. Not yet, at any rate. If Arkin's warriors come out and start beating the woods, I hardly think your friend would stick around waiting. He'd go and hide and find you later, or so I should imagine. That would be the sensible thing to do. Of course, if he's an assistant pigkeeper too, it's hard to guess how his mind would work."
"He's not an assistant pigkeeper," Taran said. Well, it's none of your business what he is."
"That's not a very polite thing to say. Well, nevertheless,"
Ilonway's voice dismissed the matter.
"the main thing is to get you out."
"There's nothing we can do," Taran said. "I'm caught here and locked up better than Arkin ever planned."
"Don't say that. I could tear up my robe and plait a cord into it. Though I'll tell you right away, I wouldn't enjoy crawling through tunnels without my clothes on. But I don't think it would be long enough or strong enough. I suppose I could cut off my hair if I had a pair of shears and add it in. No, that still wouldn't do. Won't you please be quiet for a while and let me think? Wait, I'm going to drop my bauble down to you. Here, catch!"
The golden sphere came hurling over the ledge. Taran caught it in mid-air.
"Now then," Ilonway called, "what's down there? Is it just a pit of some kind?"
Taran raised the ball above his head. "Why, it's not a hole at all," he cried. "It's a kind of chamber. There's a tunnel here, too." He took a few paces. "I can't see where it ends. It's big." Stones rattled behind him. An instant later, Ilonway dropped to the ground. Taran stared at her in disbelief. "You fool!" he shouted. "You addle-pated! What have you done? Now both of us are trapped, and you talk about sense. You haven't." Ilonway smiled at him and waited until he ran out of breath.
"Now," she said, "if you've quite finished, let me explain something very simple to you. If there's a tunnel, it has to go someplace. And wherever it goes, it's a very good chance it will be better than where we are now.
I didn't mean to call you names, Taran said, but, he added sorrowfully, there was no reason for you to put yourself in danger.
There you go again, Ilonway said. I promised to help you escape, and that's what I'm doing. I understand about tunnels, and I shouldn't be surprised if this one followed the same direction as the one above. It doesn't have half as many galleries coming off it, and besides, it's a lot more comfortable.
Ilonway took the glowing sphere from Taran's hand and stepped forward into the new passageway. Still doubtful, Taran followed.